In my childhood, I always thought my father seemed rather dim-witted. At home he couldn't take care of himself and relied entirely on my mother. What's more, he was often deceived when going out. At that time when I got poor grades in exams, one of his colleagues casually remarked, "Is this child mentally disabled?" He took it seriously and even secretly took me for an examination. Clearly, the doctor had said that the child's intelligence was normal, and that I was quite lively and optimistic. Yet he just wouldn't believe it. He persistently took me to Janjan multiple hospitals. He even sought out some so-called miracle doctor remedies, and was swindled out of a considerable amount of money. It was not until my mother discovered it and had a huge quarrel with him. She said, "People say you're a fool behind your back. Why don't you take that seriously?" He actually went to confront the person who first called me mentally disabled. The man just smiled and said he had spoken casually. However, the matter of whether I was mentally disabled sparked extensive discussions in his office. During breaks and after meals, people would always talk about him, saying that while he had numerous successful students, his own children were a disappointment. They were just joking, but my father took it more and more seriously and wanted to abandon me. The first time was on a Children's Day. He drove for over 2 hours and took me to an amusement park in the suburbs of a neighboring county. He bought me a bottle of water, told me to wait in place and then disappeared. Frankly, considering that others secretly called him a fool, he really should have reflected. I was already 8 years old at that time and I wasn't mentally disabled. After waiting for 2 hours, I borrowed a phone from a stranger to call him. I waited until it got dark, and then my mother rushed to take me home. My father said, "Why is this child running around everywhere?" Immediately I was extremely angry. "I've been waiting in place and called you, but you just hung up as soon as you answered." He asked me, "When did you call me?" My mother took out her phone and showed him the call log. No wonder people said he was a fool. After that, my mother got angrier than ever before. She said, "Before you tried to abandon him, you didn't even take him to play in a single amusement park ride." She also said, "You only bought him a bottle of water, and it wasn't wah-ha." Of course, my father didn't admit that he intended to abandon me. That time my mother slapped my father, and my father punched my mother. Since my mother's injury was on her face and was seen by others, my father claimed that my mother was crazy and was falsely accusing him of trying to abandon their daughter. As a result, everyone in his school knew that my father not only had a mentally disabled daughter, but was also a domestic abuser. The second time my father tried to abandon me, he specifically made a plan. That year, when we went back to our hometown for a family gathering, my mother got drunk. He immediately drove me to a desolate wilderness and left me there. I chased after his old car, running and throwing stones at it, but was powerless to stop the old car from disappearing from my sight. Allegedly, after he got home, he lay down in my grandmother's room and asked my grandmother to testify that he hadn't gone out at all. Unfortunately, he knew nothing about me. Although I might not be very smart, I was physically strong. I managed to trek through mountains and across ridges for 2 days and 1 night to find my way home. At dawn, I saw my mother's panicked figure as she was looking for me. I rushed over and hugged her, crying and accusing my father of being a fool. I said, he didn't even notice that I hadn't gotten in the car. When we got home, a group of relatives surrounded me and scolded me, saying, "How can you, such a young child, tell lies? You must have been playing around on your own." My grandmother even affirmed, "Your father has been in his room and never went out." I shouted. I threw stones at his car 3 times. There are 3 dents on the rear of his car. My mother ran over to check and found that the car was covered in mud, and there were indeed 3 dents on the rear. She was extremely angry. "You were willing to drive under the influence just to abandon him." Only then did my father admit it. I was drunk and confused. He kept pestering me to go out and play. I had no choice. Later, in a muddled state, my mother was so angry that she was shaking and wanted to call the police. At that time, the whole family tried to stop and persuade her, but my mother didn't back down until my sister rushed over and begged her in tears. My father said, "If you make me have a criminal record, what will happen to Shinshin? Shinshin is different from that mentally disabled one. She has a bright future ahead." My mother jumped up and almost gouged out his eyes. But the plan to call the police had to be dropped. My mother was afraid that that fool would take me out and abandon me again, so she finally chose to divorce him. Originally, she wanted to take my sister with her too because she thought my father didn't deserve to be a father. But it was not possible. My sister was too outstanding, and my father's family refused to let her go. They insisted that my sister had inherited their family's genes, while I had inherited my mother's family's genes. Although I was playful at that time, I still remember that my mother had taken me to move out and was still fighting a lawsuit with my father. Later, my grandmother, along with a group of relatives, went to my mother's workplace to cause trouble every day. Although it didn't affect my mother's work, many people in my mother's workplace started talking about me being mentally disabled. The people around me also became strange. One day when I was walking home after school, a group of children suddenly surrounded me. They held stones and told me they were candies, asking me to take a big bite. I picked up a stone and hit one of the children on the head. There were too many of them and I couldn't fight them off, so I could only be chased by them. Coincidentally, my mother finally got my father to agree to bring my sister back for a meal. Just as they entered the community with my sister, they heard someone shouting mentally disabled from afar. They quickly ran over and saw a group of children chasing me while shouting. I was so fast that they couldn't catch up. I nimbly climbed up an old bayberry tree in the community and threw caterpillars at them. Watching them scream and run around in fear below, I laughed heartily. Then I jumped down and left. He said, "I can't stand being related to such a mentally disabled person, and I came here today to tell you to stop making a fuss." I didn't stay with him. My mother stood there for a while, looking up at me and then at the big bag of groceries she had just bought. "Come down. Let's go home and I'll cook you something delicious." That day she made grilled fish, salt-baked chicken, sour soup beef, a large pork knuckle and spicy shredded potatoes. I ate 3 bowls of rice. Finally she smiled. Not long after, my mother resigned and took me to live in another city. Now that I think about it, my mother had a tough time right after the divorce. After changing jobs, her salary dropped significantly. But after the divorce, my father was like a runaway wild donkey. It was agreed that they would each pay half of the alimony for my sister and me. However, he went crazy arranging one-on-one tutoring for my sister and enrolling her in various interest classes. Things like writing, painting, also volleyball, swimming, programming, and even an embroidery class. He said she should protect intangible cultural heritage. Our Shinshin is a genius girl with high intelligence and great responsibilities. My mother said, "Is it really necessary? The child will be overwhelmed." Not long after, my sister called and coldly asked if she was reluctant to spend money on her. My mother could only concede. At least in matters related to my sister, my mother suffered a great loss after the divorce. Now she not only had to pay but also had no say. Even when she called after paying the money, my sister was indifferent to her. At that time my mother would sit there every day, calculating with a calculator, so worried that her hair was falling out. Fortunately I was more cost-effective. The piano bit me today, or I got poisoned by eating paint tomorrow. I didn't enroll in any of those classes. But although I saved money, I was a handful. My mother still had a sense of shame. As a PhD from B University, she gave birth to such a disappointing child like me. Before, she had to take care of my sister's homework. Now she only had to take care of me, and every day she was so angry that her blood pressure soared. When I got into a fight at school and she was called as a parent, she was on high alert. Hiding outside the office door and eavesdropping, she found me hugging the teacher's leg and crying, "Teacher, don't be so harsh on my mother. She's a poor single mother." The teacher was shocked. "What about your father?" "My father is dead. He died in a cold winter. He was an alcoholic and died in a drunk driving accident." "Teacher, my mother only has a primary school education. Please don't scold her." The teacher said awkwardly, "Xiaoqing, it was you who hit someone, not your mother." My mother, a literature PhD, was so angry that she let out a sound like a car horn outside the teacher's office. But she wasn't angry for long. Soon she felt embarrassed. The teacher told her that I had fought at school and got 28 points in math. The teacher asked, "Xiaoqing's mother, you only have a primary school education. I know it's difficult for you to educate your child." My mother blushed and didn't dare to refute. She didn't dare to say that I was a poor student who only deserved to be in a low-rank school. The teacher was the dean of the first middle school. Later I was called several times for fighting. My mother was puzzled. "Why on earth do you keep fighting with others?" I said, "Because I'm the boss." Well, it's hard to explain clearly. I took my mother through the 6th grade corridor. In every class, someone would rush out and call me boss. My mother went from shock to confusion to fear. She was so scared that she sat down on the ground, grabbed my collar and looked at me with despair. "Qing, have you gone astray?" I showed her the Makabaka tattoo on my arm. "No, Mom. I've just found my group." A group of children rushed over and showed the small pimple-like tattoos on their arms. My mother almost fainted. She angrily grabbed my arm and tried to drag me away. And in the process, she rubbed off the tattoo on my arm. It was a sticker my mother had put on. Ouch. Later, my mother found out that bullying was rampant in our school. My group was an alliance of primary school students who had been bullied in each class. Coincidentally, on the first day I came to this school, someone surrounded me and asked for my pocket money. I was familiar with this situation. Back in my hometown, all the children in the community would surround me, call me mentally disabled, and snatch my food and pocket money. I had developed a conditioned reflex for beating these people. Just like that, with one fight I became famous. The whole school knew that there was a boss in class 1 grade 6, who could beat junior high school students. As I walked along, I fought my way to become the school's boss. They bought stickers to show their respect for me. I told my mother, how novel. Before, when we were bullied, we didn't fight back. Until I came. My mother was extremely angry. She was really furious. She immediately reported the school to the Education Bureau. The school was in a frenzy. What kind of low-rank school was the 9th primary school? Who cared about it? But it got sued. My mother marched into the school with me, bringing a group of primary school student victims to testify. Our head teacher was dumbfounded. He couldn't figure out why a single mother with a primary school education had turned into the dean of the first middle school. After that, the teacher talked to my mother again. My mother probably thought the school wanted to use her status as a student's parent to pressure her. Before going out, she was cursing. Anyway, we're going to transfer schools. I'm not afraid of them. This kind of school needs to be rectified. Even poor students are human. My mother, who was a poor student herself, couldn't continue halfway through. When she arrived at the school, she had just struck a pose when the head teacher said, "Ching Ching's mother. Huh. You're a PhD?" My mother, who could never have imagined that one day her academic degree would become a stain she couldn't bear to mention. The head teacher sighed. "I know it's not easy being a single mother. You're also busy with work. But you still need to pay attention to your child's studies." My mother's arrogance vanished instantly. However, after this incident, my mother thought it through. She felt that although my head teacher had a soft temper and couldn't control the students, he was a nice person. Amazingly, he could find my academic strengths. My P grades were always full marks. My compositions were imaginative and could get good scores when they didn't deviate from the topic. I learned English pronunciation very quickly. Even he educated my mother. "You're a PhD from a prestigious university. Maybe it's hard for you to understand the pace at which some ordinary children understand knowledge." Because of this sentence, my mother was very grateful to him. The teacher praised you as an ordinary child. From then on, my mother suddenly had an epiphany. She stopped tutoring me herself and found a college student from an ordinary university to tutor me. With his help, I passed the exams and then could even get 80 points. My mother was so satisfied that she cried. She said, "How wonderful life is. I don't need to spend any effort, and your grades can still improve." But the happiness was hers. My father had nothing. After I finished the high school entrance examination and my sister was about to take the college entrance examination, my mother was so nervous that she couldn't sleep all night because my sister wouldn't answer her calls, saying it affected her review. However, on the day of the college entrance examination, my sister called on her own. My mother went crazy. "Shin, shouldn't you be in the examination room at this time?" My sister was crying on the other end of the phone. "Mom, please save Dad. He was taken away by the police." Allegedly, my father had attacked a student at school. A poor student had made my father so angry that he took action. My mother still decided to go. After all, what normal child would miss the college entrance examination? Her father wasn't dead. We took a plane back to City B overnight. When we got back to our old home, we found that it was very different from what it used to be. The living room was filled with my sister's various trophies, certificates, and group photos with academic giants or celebrities. How should I put it? It was the first time I had seen such a scene where honors were piled up like garbage and hadn't been dusted for a long time. The smell when we entered the door was indescribable. As for my sister, she was very beautiful but very pale. Her brows were furrowed, and she always had a sense of unease. She stared at me and asked my mother, "Why did you bring her here?" My mother was stunned for a moment. I couldn't leave my sister at home alone. My sister was angry. "Do you know how close I am to a breakdown? Do you know what I've been through during this time?" My mother was also angry. "What have you been through? Did I or your sister cause it?" She said. "Associating with such a mentally disabled person is misfortune. Dad was harmed by those mentally disabled people." My mother immediately cared about my feelings. "Don't take it to heart." I shook my head. "Mom, I'm fine." I even felt a bit sorry for her. How pitiful. She has such a father. She's already a bit crazy at such a young age. "Mom, I'm going to play with Xiaomei. Give me some money." My mother transferred the money quickly and I left. Before leaving, I could still hear my sister crying loudly inside. Xiaomei was my childhood friend. When my mother was busy with work and fighting a lawsuit to get custody of my sister, I often had meals at her house. After 3 or 4 years, we recognized each other as soon as we saw each other. She rushed towards me from afar and we exchanged the secret code. Makabaka. Upsy daisy. Then we held hands and spun around for a while. Xiaomei pushed me away. "Okay, I'm a proper person now." I followed her familiarly to her house to have a meal. Xiaomei's mother also gave me a warm welcome. She asked me, "Ching, how did you do in the exam?" I said, "Pretty well. I got into a key school." Xiaomei's mother looked at me with pity. "Don't worry. Auntie knows you're not mentally disabled. You don't need to brag. Our Ching is so smart." Then she asked me if I wanted to eat a large pork knuckle or roast chicken. When Xiaomei's mother went into the kitchen to be busy, I asked Xiaomei inexplicably, "Why did you say I was bragging?" "I'm not." Xiaomei's eyes immediately showed pity for me. She said, "Don't you remember? Before, they all said you were mentally disabled." Of course I remembered. At that time, I was the well-known mentally disabled person. First, it was in my father's workplace, then it spread to my mother's workplace, then to our community, and then to the whole street. Xiaomei said, "Every day when I opened my eyes, I could hear you arguing with people downstairs, saying you weren't mentally disabled, giving examples like you got the 3 Good Student Award and so on." In Xiaomei's mother's words, "It can't be changed. It's like a normal person being in a mental hospital." I suddenly understood. Oh, so she thought I was bragging. Xiaomei stroked my head. "It's all in the past." I was furious. "I'm not bragging. I really got into the first middle school. I got 1 point more than the admission score." Xiaomei was stunned. "Really? I don't believe it." We started tussling in the living room until Xiaomei's mother called out, "Time to eat." Xiaomei's mother cooked a table full of delicious dishes and called Xiaomei's father back to have a drink. After being neighbors for decades and seeing my father in trouble, they felt a sense of revenge. At the dinner table, they talked nonstop. They said my father had broken a student's nasal bone. It was a clear case of intentional injury. Legally speaking, that was the case. Morally, it was even worse. The other party had produced a diagnosis of depression. Logically, it was understandable that his academic performance had declined. My father, as a teacher, often verbally insulted and attacked him, calling him garbage, a waste, and mentally disabled. Xiaomei's mother said, "Serves him right. He thinks he's the smartest person in the world. He calls everyone mentally disabled." Obviously, Xiaomei was also one of the victims. When they said my father might be suspended from his job, the couple happily clinked their glasses. But Xiaomei's mother asked me, "Little Qingqing, your mother didn't come back this time to bail him out, did she?" Xiaomei's father said, "That's impossible. Not to mention that teacher Su doesn't have the ability. Even if she did, why would she bail him out?" After that, the couple looked at me expectantly. "Right, Qingqing?" I, who was eating their large pork knuckle, nodded sensibly. "Uncle and aunt, don't worry. I'll tell you as soon as I have any news." Xiaomei's father said, "Oh, we didn't mean that." Xiaomei's mother said, Yes, come and have dinner often. Auntie will stew a large pork knuckle for you." Before I could swallow what was in my mouth, Xiaomei's father said, "Won't that get boring? Tomorrow, I'll fry a whole chicken for the child." Thanks to my father, I had delicious food. I said my mother came back from my sister. She always felt that my sister's emotions were too unstable. How could she miss the college entrance examination because of such a thing? So she wanted to take my sister to see a psychiatrist, who knew my sister broke down. She said, "You think I'm like that mentally disabled person and would have that so-called depression?" My father had never spoken of me in such a way. Without my father, I would not want to live. My mother dared not act rashly, and could only accompany him to the police station for mediation. However, my mother also made it clear to me, "My concerns are not yours. If you can have fun on your own, that would be a great help." I thought to myself that wouldn't do. I had to go and see what was going on, otherwise how could I have the nerve to go to Xiaomei's house to eat meat? So, I still followed my mother to the police station every day with great enthusiasm, watching my crazy father. He was truly insane and even spouted nonsense at the police station. I'm his teacher. Maybe my methods were extreme, but I was helping him recognize himself. I poured all this information back at Xiaomei's house. Xiaomei's father laughed so hard that he banged the table. If this weren't the police station, I'd definitely break his bones. But Xiaomei's mother asked, "When he was talking nonsense, was that student there?" I said yes. Xiaomei's mother immediately started to pity the student. Alas, and he's still a teacher. The atmosphere suddenly became a bit solemn. Xiaomei's father said such a person deserved to go to jail. Xiaomei's mother kicked him and winked in my direction. That little gesture was so obvious. Xiaomei's mother tentatively suggested, "There's no need to go to the police station every day, right? It's much better to play with Xiaomei at home. I'll buy you a big watermelon and we can enjoy the air conditioning." I nodded vigorously. "Okay, I won't go." Actually, I didn't have much affection for my father and had no psychological burden either. But the watermelon and air conditioning were quite appealing. I didn't have to be at the police station to get the gossip. That day, I got to hear the gossip, while staying upstairs with Xiaomei's family of 3. My mother and father had a quarrel in the community. First, my father's loud voice attracted us to the window. I'm his teacher. Just because he has a low IQ, I'm not allowed to educate him. My mother was almost crazy. "That child just wants an apology from you," he said. "Does he deserve it? What is he? A mentally disabled person asking me for an apology? Low IQ means being mentally disabled. I even scold my own daughter like that." My mother shouted, "Stop mentioning Qingqing." He was still cursing at my mother in the community, saying that my mother was like those women who doted on their children, refusing to face reality and not knowing the true nature of their children. At that time, Xiaomei's parents and I were on the 3rd floor, each holding half a watermelon and looking down. My mother suddenly, as if inspired, turned around and looked up in horror. Scared, I lowered my head and shrank under the window. That day my mother slapped my father. My father was so capable that he dragged my mother to the police station again and extorted 2,000 yuan from her before agreeing to settle the matter. That night my mother didn't come to pick me up, but I found her by the small river. She asked me, "How did you know I was here?" I said, "It's not strange. Right after she got divorced, she went out to battle during the day and came here every night." My mother suddenly said, "I'm not a good mother." She fell into a crazy self-denial. "You're just a little different from others, and I don't know how to teach you. I even have to hire someone to teach you. My emotions are also unstable. As your father said, we who study literature are more prone to being impulsive." I finally realized what was going on. Surely today at the police station, she not only lost a huge sum of 2,000 yuan but also got hurt by my father. My father was like that. He liked to use some inexplicable logic to make others seem worthless. For example, he often said that my mother, as a liberal arts student, had no brains. How pitiful. Having such an ex-husband. I walked over and hugged her. "Mom, my father is an electrician. Everything he says is nonsense." My mother was stunned for a moment and then burst out laughing. Seeing this, I quickly continued to cheer her up. "Mom, everything will be fine when we go back. You'll be happy." At that time, I was still young and couldn't express my thoughts more precisely. I only knew that my mother seemed to have returned to the state before the divorce, which was terrible. But she was so talented and beautiful. It would be great if she could be happy every day, as long as she stayed away from that electrician. While I was anxiously trying to figure out how to make her happy, she suddenly made up her mind and asked me a question. "Qingqing, do you remember when you were 9 years old and at your grandmother's house?" I nodded and said yes. She said, "When your father took you out, what was your sister doing?" I said, She was watching. At that moment my mother looked as if she was about to break down. She lowered her eyes. There must be something wrong with my genes, giving birth to such a daughter. I casually replied, come on. If you say she's like you, my father would be the first to disagree. My mother smiled a little and said softly, Ching, I'm sorry. Mom shouldn't have deceived herself and ignored your feelings just because you're more sensible. However, don't worry. From today on, I'll be a strong mother. My mother decided to take me back the next day. That night, she took me back to the hotel to pack our things. Tomorrow we should invite Xiaomei's family to a meal, and then take you two to the amusement park to have some fun. After all, I've been freeloading at their house recently. I said okay. We also discussed which amusement park to go to, what to play and what to eat. Then in the middle of the night, someone banged on the door. My sister had come. My sister was crying hysterically. Dad went to inquire. He'll most likely be suspended. My mother was also confused. I hit a student with depression. I should have been prepared for this, right? My sister couldn't accept it. That so-called depression is just faking it. My mother frowned. Xin, you should respect others. She tried to explain to my sister what depression was. I thought it was quite funny. How old was my sister? She couldn't possibly not know this. Sure enough, my sister said. I don't need to understand such a stupid and incompetent person. Our lives won't intersect in the future. My mother said with a headache. You've really been spoiled by your father. My sister suddenly proposed. Mom, come back and take care of me. Oh, so that was the purpose of her visit today. I quietly pricked up my ears to listen. My mother said. The differences between your father and me are too great. Forcing us to be together would be bad for both of you. But my sister said. Then send my sister to our grandmother's house. At that moment my mother fell silent. My sister continued to analyze on her own. Mom, I know you took my sister because I didn't want you. Now I've thought it through. I'm going to take the college entrance examination again. Dad needs to find a job. I need you. I laughed. You're so arrogant. Clearly my mother loves me very much. But my sister was even more confident. She looked at my mother. Mom, what do you say? My mother's expression was visibly angry. You're wrong. Actually, I've always liked your sister more. My sister's expression immediately turned cold. She said, Dad said I'll definitely win the Nobel Prize in the future. I can change the world. When that time comes, if your name isn't on my gratitude list, don't regret it. My mother ignored her and followed the original plan. The next day we went on a big outing with Xiaomei's family of 3. We played from morning until sunset. At the dinner table, Xiaomei's mother finally believed that I had been admitted to the first middle school. She said, I knew it. This child has been smart since she was young. My mother said modestly, her strength is her strong ability to withstand setbacks. When parents get together, they inevitably talk about their children's futures. Xiaomei's mother said proudly, she wants to be a crosstalk performer in the future. My mother turned to me and asked, what about you? I said, I've thought it through for a long time. I want to go to a military academy in the future to defend the people and serve the country. Xiaomei was so excited that she banged the table. Go for it. Makabaka. Then she asked, will you take the exam? Upsy daisy. Xiaomei said, I can't do it. I can't endure that kind of hardship. Her mother praised, our child knows herself so well. Her father also said, she's known what suits her since she was a child. My mother looked at the carefree and plump couple, deep in thought. After we went back, my mother asked me, since when did my Makabaka have a dream? I said, in the 6th grade when I watched the National Day military parade. Mom, everyone has a dream. What was your dream when you were young? Was it to be a teacher? She had an expression as if she had eaten something unpleasant. Obviously not. I said, if you don't like it, then resign. My mother looked at me in surprise. You're about to start high school, and you also need to pay your sister's alimony. I want to start a business, but if the business fails, they'll all laugh at me. I said, I've been laughed at since I was young. It's not scary. I then analyzed for her. Now I get along well with my tutor. Your sister only needs money. You definitely have the time. My mother thought it made sense but was still hesitant. Do I look like someone who can start a company? I was shocked. Why not, Mom? You're so amazing and smart. So not long after my mother resigned, she found an old schoolmate to start a business, a media company. The first person to oppose my mother's decision to start a business was actually my father. At that time, due to pressure from the school, he had to apologize, pay compensation, and was suspended from his job. He was in the process of looking for a job, neither able to get a high-level position, nor willing to take a low-level one. He also had to take care of my sister's college entrance examination retake, which made him extremely long bay. When he learned that my mother was starting a business, he called and scolded her. You, a literature person starting a business? Here came his crazy academic snobbery again. Fortunately, my mother didn't fall for it now. She said, you look down on us literature people. What great achievements have you made in your research? This made my father lose his temper. I'm doing this for your own good. Why quit a good job and start a business to make a fool of yourself? You're even embarrassing, Xin. My mother unceremoniously retorted. Can you be more embarrassing? You're middle-aged and still can't break through the scientific research bottleneck. Now you've even lost your job at a high-level institution. Your scientific research dream is shattered. What else can you do? After that, without giving my father a chance to retort, she directly blocked him. But my father was very unhappy now. When he had achieved nothing, he couldn't stand to see his ex-wife making great progress. So, he came up with a malicious plan. He asked my sister to call my mother. Mom, can you stop starting a business? Now is the critical moment for my college entrance examination retake. Our family should unite and support Dad's work. My mother of course refused, but my sister's words made her feel as if she had eaten a fly. With the great pressure of starting a business, she sighed every day and her hair fell out in large amounts. One dark and windy night, when my mother was drunk, my sister called again and I answered the phone. My sister's fake crying came through. Mom, There was a pause and then the crying suddenly stopped. What are you doing? Give the phone back to my mother. My mother was snoring loudly. I directly lied to her. Congratulations. My mother has decided to take me back. She sneered. Of course. She just feels responsible for you. A mentally disabled person. I said, if we really go back, your good days will be over. I'll beat you every day. I'll wait for you at the school gate and on your way home. And you'd better not sleep. As soon as you fall asleep, I'll sneak in and beat you. She said, how dare you? I said, I dare. I'm not the 8-year-old me anymore. Now my fists are as big as a casserole. Do you want to try? The other end of the phone went quiet. After a while, the busy tone of the hung-up phone came. From that day on, my sister didn't call for a long time. She was afraid that my mother would really take me back and affect her college entrance examination retake. Sometimes life also needs a bit of luck. As my mother's business partner, Uncle Lee said, your ex-husband and your eldest daughter are blocking your financial luck. After those two became quiet, my mother's once struggling business took off. She finally transformed from teacher Sue to President Sue. When a person is busy with their career, there are not many worldly worries. For example, I once overheard her and Uncle Lee say, after getting rich, the parent-child relationship can also become much simpler. It turns out that some debts to children are really meant literally. It's a pity that I didn't understand this until I was middle-aged. I didn't quite understand these words either, but it was good that my mother was glowing with happiness. A few years later, I also took the college entrance examination and applied to my dream military academy. The process was full of twists and turns. First, I passed the written examination, and my mother had already started choosing a hotel to celebrate. But during the re-inspection of the military medical examination, I was found to have flat feet and was eliminated. I was okay, just a bit surprised. But my mother cried in anger. She grabbed my feet and said she couldn't accept it. How could you have flat feet? There was an arch in my foot. Just at this moment, my father somehow got wind of the news and actually called to mock my mother. He said, you not only gave birth to a mentally disabled child, but also a disabled one. My mother, who had become increasingly emotionally stable over the years, suddenly flew into a rage. She shot up from her seat and started furiously scolding my father. At that moment, the might of a literature PhD was fully unleashed. She cited scriptures and scolded my father for over 10 minutes. After my father hung up the phone, she called back to continue scolding. Later, my sister picked up the phone and said, Mom, don't be like this. I'm scared. My mother calmed down a bit. However, my sister's next words were, I know you're worried about sister. Her mind wasn't sharp to begin with, relying only on her physical strength. Now even her body isn't in good shape. At that time, I watched helplessly as my mother's anger made her hair seem to stand on end. My sister continued, Mom, actually you shouldn't be stubborn and expect too much from sister. My mother took a deep breath and said, mind your own business. Then she smashed the phone. My mother looked at the phone and then at me, feeling a bit awkward. Over the past few years, our President Sue had always been vowing to be an emotionally stable mother. She said, Ching, Mom couldn't control herself for a moment. Don't be scared. I felt like laughing. President Sue was being pretentious again. Mom, if I can't go to a military academy, I can do something else. I can team up with Xiaomei to perform crosstalk. But this sentence made her break down. My mother hugged me and cried loudly. Mom believes you can do great in whatever you do. But Mom wants you to fulfill your dream. No, I don't believe my such a well-behaved daughter could be so unlucky. I raised my hand to wipe her tears and said, performing crosstalk is also one of my dreams. Otherwise, how about I perform a piece for you now? My mother finally stopped crying and even showed a faint smile. She said it was her dereliction of duty as a mother, because she suddenly remembered this was a re-inspection. A flat-footed symptom was so obvious. How could it not have been detected in the previous examination? The next day, she took me for another physical examination and then appealed for a re-inspection. Finally, we were informed that the physical examination report had been taken wrongly and I was admitted. Actually, privately I also felt a sense of relief. When I turned around, I found my mother was going crazy. She was running back and forth in the company screaming, my Ching got in. She's not flat-footed. I watched her laughing non-stop. In fact, she had always been a person with extreme emotional swings. The best composition I wrote in my childhood was titled, I Have a Happy Mother. Right now, the colleagues in the company all said that President Sue was so enthusiastic and full of vitality. They just didn't know why she used to suppress herself. Her current state made me a bit recall her appearance back then. That was the most beautiful scene of my childhood. My mother finally let herself go. At my entrance to higher education banquet, she made a huge display. She not only invited all the company's clients, all her relatives and friends, former colleagues, and neighbors in the community, whether familiar or not. She also invited my tutor since the 6th grade of primary school, and arranged a separate table for the school leaders. Without exaggeration, she would have liked to drag even the passing dogs in to join the banquet. When she met my 6th grade primary school head teacher, she rushed over and grabbed him to talk. Mr. Huang, it was you who changed the life of our Ching. The education industry is so lucky to have a godlike teacher like you. This left my little head teacher bewildered. I'm just an ordinary primary school teacher. The part about the game is an advertisement and seems out of place, so it's skipped in this translation. My mother was quite happy until my father and sister made a high-profile appearance. Under the eyes of everyone, my sister walked towards me and said, "Sister, congratulations. Although it's not a 985 university, for you, getting into an undergraduate program is already a miracle." I said, "It doesn't matter. You're a fool and I don't like you either." She looked shocked. I wondered what she was shocked about. People grow up. She couldn't possibly think that I was still as tongue-tied as I was when I was a child and could only be taunted by her. She was still the same as when she was a child. Once the other party showed some edge, she didn't dare to confront directly and ran to my father. Over the years we had more or less become like strangers. So not many people on my mother's side knew them. They only knew that my mother had an ex-husband and an older daughter. Now that they saw them in person, they politely inquired about the situation. My father proudly told others that my sister was studying at B University. Although the school isn't that great, she's already won several national awards. Others thought he was being modest. That's President Zhang's alma mater, a top-tier institution. You're really too modest. My father said, ranked second in the country. What kind of great school is that? People laughed heartily. You're so humorous. I sighed. He wasn't being humorous, he was crazy. Just as I was thinking about what to do, my mother's mood visibly worsened. Her business partner, Uncle Lee, was adding fuel to the fire beside her. I told you these two people are bad luck for you. Maybe they're bad luck for our Ching Ching too. My mother, who used to not be superstitious in business, was becoming more and more influenced by such ideas and was even more displeased. I originally thought they were just there to show off. However, when I went to the restroom, my father suddenly blocked me at the restroom door. He came straight to the point. Ching Ching, I want to remarry your mother. The education environment in China isn't good. I plan to take your sister abroad. I'll be better off being a teacher abroad. Your sister isn't doing well in China, and I'm not doing well here either. We plan to go together. I mean, your mother's company has earned enough money. Anyway, it doesn't have much potential. There's no need to keep it going. Your mother has made a lot of money. 正好我们缺钱想一起花. He also said to let your mother go abroad with us to enrich our spiritual world. This part about Fan Yi seems wrong, and is likely a mistake in the original text, so it's adjusted. Finally, he looked at me. Because your mother has been away from me and your sister for 7 years, you should feel guilty. Now I'm giving you a chance. Go persuade your mother. I took a deep breath. Mom won't remarry you. She said your soul stinks. I looked at him in disgust. If there's no mirror at home, you should at least be able to tell from your urine. It's not like it's matte. He was furious. How can you talk so vulgarly? I said. My words may be rough, but the truth is there. As long as your IQ can understand. Also, I'm warning you. Don't cause any trouble at my entrance to higher education banquet. I have ethical pressure hitting you, but not hitting my sister. He stormed off. I didn't want to ruin my mother's mood. Otherwise, I would have slapped him today. However, as soon as I entered the banquet hall, I heard Uncle Lee whispering to my mother, your ex-husband blocked our Ching Ching at the restroom door and said he wants to remarry you. Goodness, my mother's anger flared up again. Seeing my mother jumping and running into the banquet hall, I quickly followed. Just then, an uncle asked my father where he worked. My father looked unhappy and said, I was originally a consultant at a major technology company. I just resigned recently. The uncle was stunned. But this is a top-tier company in the country. Why did you resign? My father said, cultivating a genius like Xin requires a lot of effort. I'm not like President Su. Anyway, Ching Ching is just like this. She has a lot of time to invest in herself. So, my mother's success is because of my mediocrity. My father didn't think there was anything wrong with what he said, but the uncle's expression clearly changed. My father could tell, so he added, going to a military academy and then serving as a soldier is just being cannon fodder. Grassroots people can't make it to the top. My mother directly rushed over. Was she going to start a fight? However, she just rushed onto the stage and snatched the microphone from the MC who was performing a stand-up comedy. Today is my daughter Zhaoqing's entrance to higher education banquet. I have a few words to say. My father was very calm and led my sister to sit down. But as the saying goes, a daughter knows her mother best. My mother's current expression had a sense of calm fury. Sure enough, she started a passionate outburst. Her next words were, my daughter Zhaoqing's growth has been very difficult because she has a stupid father. My father suddenly stood up, and then the whole hall of guests burst into laughter. It was the kind of joy of getting juicy gossip. He sat down again, looking at a loss and trying to pretend to be calm. My mother said, my ex-husband has a serious personality defect. He's extremely arrogant. When he encountered a research bottleneck, he would go home and insult and mock my daughter. Gradually, the laughter died down. It was completely silent. My father and sister's faces turned to Qing, but my mother was smiling. What's the use of having a high IQ? Among a group of pigs, 1 or 2 with high IQs can be found every now and then. My sister was so angry that she cried and shouted at my mother from the audience. Mom! However, my mother had the microphone. But my daughter Zhaoqing is still optimistic, cheerful, warm-hearted, and kind. She said her dream is to defend the people and serve the country. The saying a good bamboo shoot comes from a good bamboo grove refers to our Ching Ching. I stood up and bowed to everyone. Hello everyone. I'm the good bamboo shoot. Uncle Lee took the lead in laughing and patted my shoulder vigorously. My mother said, When some people humiliate the children at home, don't they think about what kind of person they are themselves? In scientific research, getting stuck in a bottleneck and giving up. As a teacher, being harsh on a depressed student. As a husband, it's hard to describe. As a father, to the extent that I want to call the police on him. And until now, achieving nothing in society. As she spoke, she raised her glass in my father's direction. Seeing my father jumping up, Uncle Lee rushed over and held him down. In public, my father could only listen in a panic. My mother continued to humiliate him on the stage. My mother smiled faintly. I'm a PhD from B University. But when Zhao Qing was young, I tutored her homework. It didn't amount to much at all. You were just fooling me. However, based on past behavior, my mother believed that my elder sister didn't need maternal love at all. My mother also lacked the confidence to communicate with her. Therefore, she directly called the doctor to adjust the dosage of the medicine. My elder sister cried out, "Are you giving up on me? Do you know that this is more painful than killing me? I really can't go on living." Her various extreme reactions were summed up as a single sentence in the doctor's medical record. Self-harm tendency. The doctor would report this to my mother and carefully consider the medication. After observing for a period of time, I found that my mother's life remained unchanged. When she talked to me on the phone, she didn't even mention my elder sister. It was only half a year later that I took the initiative to ask, "How is my elder sister? Is she feeling better?" My mother sounded a bit irritated and said, "She won't get better." My mother also said that my father had spent all his savings on medical treatment before, and had become a homeless person. This man would rather be a homeless person abroad than let people in the country know that he hadn't achieved anything overseas. When my grandmother was seriously ill, he didn't come back to pay the medical fees, and he didn't show up at the funeral either. But nowadays, with the world being so connected, he was encountered by several of his former colleagues, who took photos and posted them on social media. I exclaimed in surprise. He muttered a curse under his breath before continuing to complain. They father and daughter are just alike. They really can't stand even the slightest setback. With the previous experience as a warning, my mother was extremely disheartened by my elder sister. After I graduated from university, before I officially reported to the Navy, I caught a distant glimpse of my elder sister. To be blunt, I was shocked. She had been taking hormone medication for a year, and she looked dreadful. She had gained so much weight that she weighed 200 pounds, her pores on her face were extremely large, and her hair hung in strands on her head. But my mother said she was getting better, and there were fewer episodes of her illness. Later on, I went to sea, got married, and had children. The life at sea was so magnificent and eventful that all the past events were left far behind me. When I was 32 years old, my father died abroad, and his body was found in a garbage dump. My elder sister was notified. By that time, my mother had already driven my elder sister out to fend for herself. In fact, my elder sister had already recovered a long time ago, but she would rather pretend to be mentally ill than face her own mediocre self that had long been out of touch with reality. Unfortunately, she couldn't deceive the doctor. To her credit, not long after she went out, she found a job organizing documents. When I came back during my annual leave, I happened to meet her near the place where she worked. She came out facing me and recognized me at a glance. I knew that with my dark skin and tall stature, I was quite noticeable even without my sailor shirt. And she now looked like a chubby middle-aged woman with very low spirits. When she saw me, she immediately lowered her head and tried to walk away. It was not until my mother noticed and had a big quarrel with her that her steps froze. At that moment, my emotions were very complicated. In fact, when my father first called me mentally disabled when I was a child, it was my elder sister who stood up for me and retorted against him. But she didn't know that my father had already gone crazy due to the research bottleneck at that time. She was slapped by my father, and my father choked her neck and told her, "If you stay with this mentally disabled person again, you'll also become social trash in the future. Do you understand?" When I was a child, I hated her for imitating my father's behavior to bully me and my mother in order to please my father. Later, I came to understand that she was as cowardly as my father, using my mother and me as stepping stones in the family hierarchy. But I still disliked her very much. Now that my father was dead, I suddenly felt a sense of relief, as if a flower that had bloomed and then withered had blossomed again. But the only kindness I could offer her was a single sentence. "There's nothing to be ashamed of. Don't be like Dad." End of the full text.